Sabrina 70s comic issue 23. Harvey tells Sabrina that the cemetery is a strange place to study. Sabrina says that it being quiet makes it easier to concentrate even though she's still got Harvey with her. The real excuse is somehow that's because she's a witch. But she's never done this before as far as we've seen. Then we see a ghost who knows Sabrina and Harvey, so he scares him out of spite. Wouldn't Sabrina know this would have happened? So she wouldn't bring them there? Then Sabrina scolds the ghost because he promised he'd never do that again. Why did she trust him? Then all of a sudden, some kid who witnessed the whole thing asks the ghost how he made himself look transparent. He confusingly insists that the kid deserves this for being in the cemetery, God forbid giving him company, and shows him sudden images of monsters, which doesn't scare the kid because he doesn't believe in ghosts, even after this happened to him. I don't buy that the kid would be acting like this at all, unless he was literally unable to be afraid, which is possible in humans, but very rare. After the ghost shows him a new place, he just wants to learn those tricks, even though he knows he's not a ghost. This isn't a good story. The ghost gives up because the world's full of idiots, and Sabrina says they did a service to humanity shutting him up. And then it turns out the kid was just a ghost who was somehow able to disguise himself as a regular person, who Sabrina also knew. Okay, that just raises further questions. Why would he be able to change his appearance in that way, let alone stay on Earth to do nothing? Why did Sabrina think taking Harvey here would go well? I can't say that wasn't an interesting story, but it made no sense. You'd think Sabrina would cast a not haunted spell on the place. In the next story, Hilda says she's exhausted from all that shopping in crowded stores, and lies down on the couch. Of course, something bad happens, as she hears Sabrina having a party, and she's too tired to object. She lampshades that she should have just gone to her bedroom in the first place. Can she set a spell to make herself unable to hear outside her room? She could teleport her room somewhere quiet. Instead, she hears a noise because Zelda started vacuuming. Because they're expecting some witches for dinner tomorrow. But how? They don't have jobs with other witches. I guess they only have magical money still from inheritance. We saw them zap up magical money, but I think off panels aren't canon. Zelda says that if she doesn't vacuum air now, she never will. Why doesn't she just use magic to make the vacuum mute? Hilda wants to sleep on the lawn chair in the front yard at least. And predictably, she hears some noise there too. This is a very relatable problem of hers, but the joke's too repetitive to be funny. It's only creative in that she's bothered by a different noise every time. But I'm just wondering why a witch doesn't make herself go deaf at will to sleep just fine. So after a car motor bothers her, she takes a cot down to the basement and a plumber bothers her about a leaky pipe. As apparently a plumber was hired instead of the witch just fixing the pipe herself. So she zaps everyone who is making noise over to an island so she can get some sleep, instead of teleporting herself to the island alone. I guess Sabrina had to erase their memories of that. In the next story, Harvey screams at seeing a flying carpet with grocery bags on it. And then Sabrina erased his memory of it to calm him down right away. No, instead she lies to him that he imagined things and hopes she convinced him. Worst case scenario, he'd assume he was crazy and get handed pills for it. Suddenly, it turns out that Hilda was responsible for the flying carpet. Sabrina asks why she didn't just teleport this stuff in, and fortunately Hilda explains herself. Her power's weak because she gotta get her weekly recharge gun. Can witches just decide when to get a recharge whenever they want? I thought all witches had an annual recharge. Does this mean Hilda uses so much magic that she needs her annual recharge every week? I assumed she uses it just as much as every witch. Maybe she means a natural recharge that she can get without needing to give up her witch battery for 3 days. She tells Sabrina that the carpet takes a lot less power than the zap. I guess because she just used magic on the carpet once. She can't even get herself a cup of coffee with magic without it falling and breaking. And yet she still thinks she can make one more short trip with the carpet, which is even larger than the cup. And she's right, somehow. The carpet crashes into Harvey, Then Hilda holds 2 yellow bars together from a power pack, and immediately recharges enough to at least make the carpet fly into the fruit stand to get her lemons, with Harvey on it. She zaps him home, and the story ends with Harvey's therapist talking about his hallucination, which might get him prescribed stuff he doesn't need. Why didn't Hilda erase his memory of all this? In the next story, Hilda tells some neighbor of hers to let go of a milk bottle. I hate that she says, "let go" instead. And her saying "consarn it" didn't help either with letting me immediately read her dialogue. Her neighbor says that the cat had knocked it over and she was setting it up right. But then Hilda's sympathetic because it turns out Annie's been stealing her milk every chance she gets. Gee, I wonder why. And she runs away with her broom because she left it outside. Sabrina brings Hilda the mail and she asks if there's anything interesting, and she tells her the factory is recalling her 74 Batswing 8 because they have a faulty spell stabilizer, and could result in erratic behavior. Hilda has to tell her what erratic means, and wants to find that broom and ship it back. And she hopes they won't try to charge her for fixing it. She could have just walked outside and realized the broom was gone. That would have been much faster than this confusing contrivance. The neighbor says she gets a kick out of tormenting Hilda, and she plans on returning the broom in a week just to confuse her even more. That's nicer than keeping it forever. Then, for no reason, she sees the broom move. After some thought, it does make sense that she'd think Hilda's crazy because she's always dressed like a witch. After the neighbor's paranoid that Hilda would recognize her broom if she used it outside, when every broom looks basically the same, and it looks like just generic, stereotypical broom, the broom ends up making her fly against her will. That doesn't make any sense. She's not even a witch. I'm sure it has magic in it, but why? I guess it's just in case a witch wanting to use it ran out of magic. She thinks she's hallucinating and gets thrown in the mud. And because people don't want the mud in their car, they don't pick her up in it. So she has to walk 10 miles to get home. The story ends with Hilda showing her a broom and scaring her away, and Sabrina has some good chemistry with her for once by finding it funny. The first story is about Harvey getting scared out of a cemetery that Sabrina arbitrarily went to with him, and then a ghost disguised himself as a normal kid just fine somehow and isn't scared of the first ghost, which annoys him away. And somehow both of these ghosts already know Sabrina. Why did Sabrina bring him here? How can ghosts be here and be a master of disguise? Wouldn't a ghost have replaced the leader of a country? That's a power that can be abused so easily. After that pointlessness, it's a whole story about Hilda having the relatable, if exaggerated, problem where she can't find anywhere quiet to go to sleep. But she's a witch. Won't she just make herself deaf to sleep wherever she wants? Won't she teleport herself to the island instead of everyone else being teleported there? After a story where Harvey gets forced to fly on a red carpet he saw earlier, because Hilda was low on power and memorably revealed she has a recharger in her own house, which must be a brand new development in witch culture, because I remember them having to give up their magic for 3 days. The last story is about Hilda's neighbor stealing her broom just for it to somehow decide to give her a ride on its own without a brain. It makes sense if they weren't convoluted and just had Hilda cast a spell. Hilda could have warped the broom back to her. She could have cast a spell to make the broom fly back to her. I have to assume her broom is immune to magic. That would explain why witches still buy stuff from the witch supermarket instead of warping it to them, or creating the stuff with magic. It's all immune to magic. Because if a witch could zap up potion ingredients, then they'd be creating new magic out of thin air. If they could zap up a brand new version of something magical, then if they can create new magic, I'd also have to wonder why they don't make themselves omnipotent